Good morning. I am Ria. I'm a compulsive overeater and bulimic, and today's workshop is on relationships in recovery. And as my main resources, I'm going to be using two sections of the big book. One is The Family Afterward, and the second one is a story called Acceptance is the Answer. So let's just jump in. You don't have to have your big book in front of you, but if you do, obviously it's helpful, but also you can just listen. Up to you. Okay, so on page 122 of the big book is chapter 9, The Family Afterward. And I happen to think I'm one of those like hardcore, I'd say I'm a purist because I'm open to all different types of new information, but I will say that all the information I've ever needed about anything, I found in the big book. Like they have relationship advice in the big book, and it's way better than anything you'll read in Cosmo. So for example, let's take a look here, right? So in the very first chapter, it says, all members of the family should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. This involves a process of deflation. The alcoholic, his wife, his children, his in-laws, each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitude toward himself or herself. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. We find the more one member of the family demands that the others concede to him, the more resentful they become. This makes for discord and unhappiness. And why? Is it not because each wants to play the lead? Is not each trying to arrange the family show to his liking? Is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family life rather than give? Cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained, abnormal condition. A doctor said to us, years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. The entire family is to some extent ill. Okay, so let's break that apart because that's a big nugget right there. Okay, so first of all, they give very clear directions that the family needs to meet upon a common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. Okay, so tolerance means that we allow other people to be who they are. Not just that, but we leave them alone about it, right? You got to do you. Understanding means empathy, putting ourselves in their shoes, trying to see where they're coming from, and love, which is an action that we do at small acts of service, kind words, all different actions. Love is not just a feeling. I listen, I was raised on rom-coms, right? Romantic comedies. So I always just thought that love was something that happened and then the credits roll in the end. But actually, love is an action and a choice that I have to take every single day. Um, Okay, so this involves a process of deflation. So I happen to love the word deflation because I think of like my ego as this giant balloon that I have to stick a pin in and just because my ego is so big and so inflated that it will take up the entire room. Okay, it will take up the entire house. It will take up the entire planet. I need to deflate my own ego in order to be able to be a productive member of the family. Why? Because when my ego is leading the way, then I am trying to run the show of my family. And this is a very parallel to what we read in step 3, where they talk about the actor trying to run the show, right? We have fixed ideas about the family's attitude. I want my wishes respected. And the more I demand that others concede to me, the more resentful they become. So, in other words, and I've seen this in action in a lot of different families. And I was lucky to get into recovery early, so I didn't have to really go through as much of this, but basically, I know a family, for example, where the parents have very clear ideas of what their children should grow up to be. Now, all of their children did not grow up that way, and they have a lot of kids. Therefore, they have spent the rest of their lives either shaming, blaming, or trying to manipulate their children into being who they think they should be. Is it any wonder that those relationships are strained? This is this is not, and listen, this is not always out of bad intention. Sometimes we, as parents or as family members, really love the people in our families and feel that they should do something different, and then they would be happy. And if they would just do that, then they would save themselves a lot of problems. But the problem is that I can't make anybody do anything. I've said this before in this meeting. I can give over my experience, but I can't give anybody willingness to do anything. So that's the same thing here, right? And the more that I insist that my way is right, the more conflict I'm going to be in with my family. So I have to step away from the idea that I know what's best, even as a parent, which is so hard, right? And especially as a mom, who's working with a dad. Because I don't know, for all the, straight couples here who are raising children, there is a distinct difference between the way that I parent as a mother and my husband parents as a father. And I feel that 99.9% of the time I'm right. And the truth is I am, but like, okay, whatever. I'm giving him that 0.1%. But I'll give you an example, okay? We have, thank God, we have 5 kids. I have two of my, sorry, that's my dog in the background, just destroying my life. So whatever, it's fine. She's adorable. We'll keep her. So we have 5 children. My two oldest are my two stepdaughters from my husband's first marriage. And then we had 3 boys together, but I have 5 children. My girls were very young when I married my husband, and we'll get to that one in a minute. So together we have 5 children, and my 14-year-old, who is my fourth child, hear that, is my fourth child, who has very clear ideas and a very strong will. Wonder where he got that from. And he will push and push and push and push until he gets what he wants. And he's gorgeous and he knows it. So like it's a bad mix all around. Sorry, one second. Tilly, stop it. Sorry, this is going on YouTube. Whatever. Anyway, so just recently, my 14-year-old, who's athletic and has no interest in school, has never had interest in school, is fetching to me about how he hates his school and he wants to go to this other school. And I'm like, you're right. You're having a hard time. It's so hard for you. Plus, I moved you to this other country and I feel so guilty about it. So you're right, honey. It's so hard for you. I'm moving you to this other school. My husband had other ideas about that and said, he should go to that other school. I'm thinking maybe we should try to make it work at this school. And I was like, thanks for your input. We all know who's running the show here. I'm going to bulldoze right past you and make this happen. Okay. So I did. I made it happen. We got the meetings. We did we got the interview, got into the new school. He started the new school. Guess what? Lo and behold, he's been there a month. Guess who's now bitching about wanting to go back to his old school? But I thought I was right. I thought I was right. I'm not right. I don't know what's best for all the time. And when I push to get my way, and my intentions are good, I want to help my kid, right? But when I push and say, I know what's right here, I know what's supposed to happen, I get myself into trouble. And my husband even said to me, I really hate that you did that. I really hate that you just made a decision and completely ruled out my opinion. And he's 100% right. Now, would I care as much if it all worked out for my son? Who knows? But now I care because I'm like, oh, right, maybe he had something to add to this conversation. Anyway, but my point is I have learned my lesson because, this morning my son was whining again about having to go. And I said, if you have concerns, please take it to the other manager of this department, who is your father, because I already handled this once for you. If you want to change the situation again, you're going to have to talk to somebody else because I did it. So now I'm going to let my husband handle it. Will he handle it the way that I would handle it? Absolutely not. But at this point, I don't care. So right. I absolutely have been guilty of trying to arrange the family show out of fear of my children not getting what they want or me not getting what I want. And we'll talk more about that later, okay? Cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained and normal condition. A doctor said to us, years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. The entire family is to some extent ill. And I definitely see that in my case, particularly with my family of origin. My family, the family that I've built with my husband, they've really never seen me using, except for this 3-month period where I decided to experiment with intuitive eating and intuitively ate my way up 30 pounds. But for the most part, they only know me in recovery. So there's no like before and after in that regard with them. But in my family of origin, I definitely saw it because my history was I was the squeaky wheel who always got the grease. And at the same time, it was facilitated that I would be constantly needing other people because anytime I got into trouble, somebody swept in and took care of me. So I had this sort of learned helplessness. I had my siblings who were quietly looking and going, well, why is mom always taking care of her? What about us? And so when I got abstinent, I expected everybody to be so happy for me because now I'm like, thin. I've got my life together. But it turned out that there were a lot of dynamics that came up with my mom because we had this dynamic where I'm in trouble, you fix it. I'm in trouble, you fix it. And now I was saying to her, I'm going to fix it myself, and not knowing how to engage with her in a way that was just like talking about diets and hating our bodies together. Now, what do we talk about? And I wanted her to be in recovery. And even now, 20 something years later, my siblings still, I have one brother who told me a few years ago that he didn't talk to me for a long time and I didn't understand why. And he said it was because he resented the fact that my parents gave me so much attention and he didn't get his emotional needs met. He's made amends for it since, thank God. But like these things have an effect. We think, oh, because I'm eating compulsively, I'm gaining weight, I'm not hurting anybody, I'm not coming home drunk, I'm not. It's a lot more subtle and insidious than I think. So there's that piece. Okay. Right. So as a family member, I have to be willing to become a member of the family, which is a collective community. It's not Ria's family, it's the family, and I am a member of said family. Now, that's not to say that there aren't subtleties where I'm the parent and you're the child, and I need to, make judgment calls and decisions, et cetera, et cetera. But I can't impose my will for who you are and who you're supposed to be on anyone else in my family. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so now they're going to teach us how to fight. Okay, this is great. I love this. So on page 124, it says, it is possible to dig up past misdeeds so they become a blight, a veritable plague. For example, we know of situations in which the alcoholic or his wife have had love affairs. In the first flush of spiritual experience, they forgive each other and drew closer together. The miracle of reconciliation was at hand. Then, under one provocation or another, the aggrieved one would unearth the old affair and angrily cast his ashes about. A few of us have had these growing pains, and they hurt a great deal. Husband and wives have sometimes been obliged to separate for a time until new perspective, new victory over hurt pride could be re-won. In most cases, the alcoholic survived this ordeal without relapse, but not always. So we think that unless some good and useful purpose is to be served, past occurrences should not be discussed. That's like very clear advice. Don't bring up old shit in your fights. If something is bothering you from the past, have a conversation about it over coffee. When I'm pissed at my husband because of A, B, and C, and this happens at least twice a day, that is not the time to bring up the time 15 years ago when he said something that upset me. Or when, we had this fight 15 years ago. And because when my husband and I were first married, I had no life skills at all. I'd been abstinent for about 3 years, which basically made me a 3-year-old. And I hadn't had a spiritual experience yet. So I expected him to just sort of be Prince Charming and make it all better for me. And then I just realized I took on another human who actually made things more complicated. And so he, in the first 4 years of our marriage, I left, I think twice. And I took our kids and I went, because I had no other skills. So, but I had my reasons for leaving, but I left. That's how I dealt with it. So, even today, if something comes up, I'm so tempted to be like, remember why I left? Remember that? That was like 16 years ago. We're not having this conversation anymore. We're talking about right now. I don't know about you, but if somebody threw in my face all the ways that I fucked up over the past almost 43 years of my life, that would not be fun for me. And I certainly would not feel close or loving to this person. And it doesn't fix anything, particularly in the moment. So if I'm going to fight, if there is an issue that comes up, I need to talk about the issue now, and I need to talk, and they talk about this later. I'm going to read it in the story, but basically, I talk about how I feel, not what I think. This situation makes me feel blah. I would appreciate it if you could not do that because it makes me feel blah. Not, that thing you did? It's exactly like that thing you did 16 years ago where you almost blew up our marriage and I hate you. You know what I mean? Like it's just different, just a different vibe there. So in general, if there is a prevailing issue that does need to be addressed, address it. Just address it, not in the heighted times. You might need to go to a therapist and talk it out. I don't know. But the point is, have a conversation about that when it's relevant and not in the moment where you're ready to kill each other. Another thing, okay, they're really big in this chapter about keeping your mouth shut, which is a very hard thing for me. because I see all and know all, and you should know what I think because your life would be 10 times better if you just did what I said. So another principle we observe carefully, this is on page 125. We do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. We find it better when possible to stick to our own stories. A man may criticize or laugh at himself and it will affect others favorably, but criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect. Members of a family should watch such matters carefully, for one careless, inconsiderate remark has been known to raise the very devil. We alcoholics are sensitive people. It takes some of us a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. In other words, shut your mouth. I am one of those people who can dish it out but can't take it. So like I will tell everybody what I think. I will, I am the queen of sarcasm. I can cut people down with my words, but heaven forbid my husband says to me, I have a hair out of place, I will rip his gullet out. Like it's completely imbalanced, but it's just the truth. I don't have the luxury of criticism or ridicule. Do I still do it? Absolutely. 100%. But progress, not perfection, right? A day where I could have made 100 criticisms and I make 99 is a win. Okay. There are times where I'm the queen of ridicule in my house, but the truth is we do it in a lighthearted way. My sponsor overhears me making fun of my children all the time. And I'm not doing it to be mean or to control. We just are having fun with each other. But if I'm doing it in a way to exert control or shame, there's no place for that. And the other night, I'll give you an example, okay? The other night, so I dropped my son off at Krav Maga, which is like martial arts here in Israel, and my husband was supposed to pick him up. And I have learned to lay off him a little without sending a million reminders, go pick up, you have 10 minutes, blah, 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 because I'm trying to respect my husband's autonomy and let him learn from his own process, which makes me want to die inside, but I do it anyway. So my husband was supposed to pick him up at 7:30. 8:20, I said to him, did you pick up Aryeh? And I saw his face just fall. Now, this would have been the perfect moment for me to be like, what is wrong with you? Like, you left your son at whatever. I said nothing. I said 0 things. Okay. So, because I knew he was already devastated about the fact that he had left our son by accident. So he went and got my son, brought him home. I gave my son lots of cuddles because he needed, we love you and, your father hates you. And I'm sorry that, what? No, I didn't say that. I'm sorry your father is an irresponsible and has ADHD and can't manage his time. Anyway, have you noticed that the hardest relationship I need to work this in is my marriage? We'll get to that also. So anyway, so my husband comes into the room and I just kind of look at him like this. And he's like, shut up. I'm like, I didn't say anything. I said nothing. Yes, you can see with my eyes how I'm telepathically judging you, but I said no things to you about this. And to me, that was a win because he doesn't need me to criticize him for something that he clearly already feels badly about. He's very well aware that he screwed up. He doesn't even need me to make fun of him about it, even though I would love to do that. And I probably will in like a month when it's not like so painful. But the point is, it's not helpful in that situation, even if I'm upset about the fact that he did that, because really it's just my fear of my son being traumatized and going to his therapist one day and saying that like we ruined his life because my father forgot to pick me up at Krav Maga one night. It's all just fear. It's all just fear of something bad happening, but really it's fear of my own emotional pain, because if my kids are in emotional pain, then I'm in emotional pain. So I'm afraid of my own discomfort. So I need to just organize everybody to avoid that. But really, that's not my job. Okay, now we are on page 127. The head of the house ought to remember, this is the second full paragraph. The head of the house ought to remember that he is mainly to blame for what befell his home. He can scarcely square the account in his lifetime, but he must see the danger of over-concentration of financial success. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, we found we could not place money first. For us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded. Since the home has suffered more than anything else, it is well that a man exert himself there. He's not likely to get far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof. We know there are difficult wives and families, but the man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. Okay, let's pick that one apart. So a lot of us, or at least me, when I got into recovery, I was very focused on I was very focused on working my program of recovery, but I did that by shutting out my family. I felt that they would interrupt my process and I didn't want to get tangled up in their crap. So I just I put this invisible wall around me and got this sort of holier than thou attitude that I can only imagine how intolerable I was to live with. Um, but the truth is, at the time, I was missing the point because getting abstinent and losing weight and enjoying the benefits of abstinence are only the beginning. They're just taking away the medication or the poisonous medication I was using that my real problem is alcoholism, right? The selfishness, self-centeredness. So if I'm not eating, then I'm just untreated. So I'm still treating everyone in my family selfishly. The idea is I have to learn how to operate within a community and show unselfishness and love. I can't do that without working the 12 steps because if left to my own devices, I'll just stay in my own crap. So I have to learn how to function without myself as the center. My problem was that I thought abstinence was the be all and end all, and I could behave however I wanted to because I was thin and pretty and young. In some cases, especially in America, that's true. But if you want to have happy relationships with people, it's not true. Um, there are difficult wives and families, but the man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. Now, obviously, if there are people who are abusive to you, you didn't cause that. It's not your fault if someone is abusive to you. I want to clarify that, right? There is, unfortunately, I work with women. I'd say a significant percentage of women that I work with have been victims of some kind of molestation or assault or, abuse of some kind. It's not their fault. You didn't do anything to invite that. And I will say that forever and ever. So this whole thing of and I know a lot of people take umbrance with that when they have to do their fourth step and they're like, what, I have to look at my part when somebody abused me. That's a whole different conversation. But the baseline is that if somebody hurt me 20 years ago, that's on them. If I'm still resenting them and hurting myself about it now, that's on me. That's the difference. Okay. And that's a very important distinction. So, yes, I may have somebody in my life who was abusive to me years ago. Or they just had, let's say I had somebody in my family who was an alcoholic or a workaholic. Or I'll give you a perfect example. My father, God bless him, decided to become religious, an Orthodox Jew when I was growing up, which my family was not. And because he didn't have a lot of emotional tools, he thought the best way to do it, so no one felt pressured, was to go off and do it completely on his own without talking to anybody about it. But we took it as he completely shut us out, right? So for years, I had a lot of beef about that. And then I worked this program and God gave me some clarity and I was able to see things from his perspective. And I really do see him with a lot of empathy now, particularly because I believe he is neurodivergent and grew up in the 50s where nobody knew about any of these things. And his mom died when he was 17. So he had no one to help him, He had my mother and then she passed away. So the point is, if my father made a choice 25 years ago, but I continue reacting to him because of that choice, then what's happening between us now is my part. It's not then, it's now. So whether somebody is a narcissist or this or that, whatever the engagement is, the dynamic, I'm still part of that dynamic, for better or worse. So that's the part I have to look at. And regardless of how they behave, I'm not going to change them. And so if I'm still engaging, trying to change or convince this person, I'm creating a sick dynamic. Okay? I'm not saying that the other person isn't at fault, but I'm responsible for my end of the relationship. And so sometimes I may have someone who is a narcissist, and if I keep engaging with them, trying to make them not a narcissist, then I am like that dynamic is me being part of that dynamic. I just want to make that clear. Um, that said, there are also situations, like I said, with my brother, where, I could hold it against him that he didn't talk to me for 12 years because he was angry about the way my parents, divided their attention. But I can also look at the fact and say, it must have been really hard to live with me. I was really demanding. My mother, was constantly doing stuff to help me. She went away with me for a month. She left the other three siblings at home. I demanded a lot. So I get to choose whether I want to hold that against him or say, listen, this is the outcome of choices that I made. So now I have to try to make good on it. Okay. Next paragraph. Family talks. As each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to the others, he lays a basis for helpful discussion. These family talks will be constructive if they can be carried on without heated arguments, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. Guys, this is gold. This is gold, this advice. Please take this, photocopy it, tape it on every wall in your house. It is absolute genius, okay? Because I learned and was trained in how and turnarounds and doing a 4-step and looking at my part, I have been communicating with my children and my husband like this for their entire lives. I take no credit for this, but my family is a family in action where we discuss our own shortcomings and take ownership, or at least I do. My kids, I'm still teaching because they're teenagers and they're boys, and God forbid anyone take responsibility for anything. But my point is, I do hold them accountable. There are times where they'll blame the other one, and I say, no, 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 you are responsible for your own choices. And I learned that from this program. And the only way that I feel comfortable saying that to them is because I take responsibility for my choices. If I yell at the kids, I apologize. If something comes up and I say something, I will say to them, I shouldn't have said it like that. I was feeling fear about this, this, and this, or, I was tired and kind of taking it out on you, or sometimes I'm so frustrated. I take ownership of where I'm coming from, and my kids are learning that. My youngest, he's 11. Sometimes he will yell and come back and be like, I shouldn't have said that. I'm really sorry. Like, that's a learned behavior that he learned from me, but I learned it from this program. I take no credit for it. I'm just telling you, I'm not a great, I'm not some fabulous super mom. I'm sure as shit not a super mom, but I do have tools that come straight from here. Okay. So I'm very quick to acknowledge my shortcomings. Even last week, something happened with my husband and there was a whole thing with my daughter and blah, blah, blah. We were in the car and I said to my daughter, like, it's amazing how I can take a situation and somehow turn it into harsh self-judgment. And like, I'm feeling uncomfortable right now because I'm taking this and turning it against myself. And she said to me, she's genius, she's 23. She was like, yeah, but that's actually a really good quality if you look at the flip, because now you can take accountability for who you are and you see yourself very clearly. Like, these are the conversations we have in my family, which is awesome. And when things do come up, we try to have them without heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. So the heated argument piece, we're not like a screaming, fighting family by any means, but there are definitely some like fiery talks. Let's put it that way. I mean, my sons like, smack the crap out of each other and yell at each other or whatever until we like pull them apart. But that's like, boy stuff. But no, we definitely argue and but the difference is that when I talk to them, I don't self-justify when I make a mistake. That's a really important skill for myself and for the kids, because I feel it's important to take ownership of my part. Sometimes I take ownership of too much, I'll even say. And I try not to criticize, but at the same time, I will call my kids out on stuff. And because I'm me, I don't say it gently. For example, the other day, my 16-year-old was giving me a hard time about something. I asked him to do something for me and he was like whining about it. I was like, I made you with my body. You never get to say no to anything I ask you ever. Get your ass off the couch. And he did it, because that's how we roll in my family. So, but you can deliver these things with love. It's hard boundaries, but stay away from the heated argument, which I still work on because I'm a Sagittarius and I'm a fire sign and I'm just all fire. Self-pity, really try to stay away from this one. There are times where I'm like, ugh, my life is so hard. Ugh, ugh, ugh. And then I hear my kids saying it. I'm like, ew, that's so gross. You have everything. So like, I really try to hear to myself. Self-justification. If I make a mistake, it's my mistake, not your mistake. And resentful criticism. So that just please pay attention to that one. That's a good one. Okay, let's see. Now I'm on page 131, which is, and I'm in the second paragraph here that starts with drinking. So I'm just they're talking here about how when the father gets sober again and he starts developing interest in other things. So they're talking about the rest of the family. Instead of developing new channels of activity for themselves, mother and children demand that he stay home and make up the deficiency. So this is like a classic Al-Anon dynamic where I place all of my needs on this one person, where really, as if I'm a member of a family or a member of a community or even a relationship, it is irresponsible of me to demand that the other person be everything for me. And this applies, by the way, if you're not in a partnership, if you don't have a family, any relationship that I have, I can expect somebody to give me something that is not their responsibility to give. And so they're talking about developing new channels of activity for yourself. A healthy person has their own well-rounded life and does not make any other person the center of their life. We have worked the 12 steps to develop God consciousness, which means that I'm working in partnership with God to get what I need and build the life that God wants me to live. I'm not placing a person in the middle of it and saying, please give me what I need. I just need your love and affection and attention. That's unhealthy and it's unfair. And it's irresponsible because you're absolving responsibility for things you need to do for yourself to another person. It's not their job. Okay. So whether you're a parent, not a parent, a child, a sibling, whatever, you're responsible for building your own life and your own interests and your own connections outside of that relationship. Okay. Fine. Next sentence at the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact that each will have to yield here and there if the family's going to play an effective part in the new life. Compromise, guys. Compromise. I hate compromise because I just want the thing that I said. So why do I have to give up any of it? But there's a really great saying I've heard, do you want to be peaceful? Do you want to be right? Or do you want to be peaceful? Now, a lot of the time I want to be right. I'll be completely honest with you. Peace is meant. But in the long run, happy relationships come down to compromise and being willing to consider somebody else's part. Again, this is the antithesis of where we're coming from here, which is me being obsessed with me and my needs. Okay. So being open to compromise, and when I'm not open to it, at least asking for help to be willing to. All right. So now we're on page 132, right? Bottom of the second paragraph. They talk here about like, we're supposed to like be happy, joyous, and free. We're supposed to be having fun. This isn't just about like carrying the world's burdens on our back. But here it says, when we see a man sinking into the mire that is alcoholism, we give him first aid and place what we have at his disposal. For his sake, we do recount and almost relive the horrors of our past. But those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them. This is a very clear distinction, particularly for those of us who live and or love or are in relationships with people who are struggling with addiction, mental health issues, et cetera, et cetera. I am here to offer my experience, but I cannot carry it for you. I cannot sit here and try to fix it for you. And I actually started this meeting, these monthly workshops, because I was going through that experience. My 16-year-old, he was dealing with a lot of like mental health issues and depression. And I was just felt like I was drowning trying to fix it for him. And it got to the point where I had this epiphany that was like, he can suffer. You don't have to suffer alongside him. Like you can be willing there to offer the menu of options for him to take. If he's choosing not to take them, you can't sit up at night agonizing about it, because it will affect your own recovery. I'm not here to fix anything for anyone. I'm only here to offer the options that I have at my disposal. As a parent, that means taking him to therapy or helping him join a gym or, taking him out, whatever or taking him to buy new clothes, getting him a haircut, whatever it is that he needs. But if I sit here placing myself and making myself his higher power, it's going to interrupt my own recovery. He has his own journey, right? If I think of my own journey, this program never really clicked for me until the day I realized that no one was going to do it for me except myself. My mother said to me one night, like, if I could, I wish I could fix it for you. And as if like out of nowhere, this voice came through me that was like, maybe it's not your job to fix it for me. Neither of us had ever considered that ever. But in that moment, it was very clear that the only person who was gonna make this happen for me was me with God's help. So if I can't presume to think that if I worry about this enough, that I'm going to make it happen for this person, I'm not that powerful. So I have to, I can be present for them without carrying it for them because that compromises me and I don't have that luxury. Okay, so let's see. All right, page 133. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We should not be walking around like sad sacks, you guys. Life is fun and it's hilarious, even when it's sad. Okay, I made a joke the other day. So, as I said, I live in Israel. Things are very interesting here. They've been interesting for over a year. And there was a stabbing in my town. So, at first, everybody in town was really nervous. And then we found out that it wasn't a terror attack. It was just like the regional mafia who like, the family mafia. And we were like, oh, thank God, just a mafia stabbing, not a terror attack, and like, you have to laugh about these things because otherwise you'll cry. Like life is freaking intense, but it's also hilarious if you're willing to look at it that way. And that's the only way I can survive. Um, that may sound really dark, but you know what? Life is freaking dark sometimes. And for me, survival is laughing. Okay. So it says here, avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery, right? It's clear that we made our own misery. God didn't do it. And it says that also in We Agnostics. We create our own misery by lack of acceptance of life as it is, and by trying to control life. We create our own misery. We run into the wall over and over again. But if we avoid the deliberate manufacture of misery, we can look at trouble and cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate his omnipotence. I could sit here whining all day long about how hard it is to, every cent I make goes to my children and I worry every month about how we're going to pay rent and this, and this. Or I could be like, you know what, God? Fine. Mission accepted. You want me to pray more? Let's pray. And like I pray and now God's totally showing off. I was worried that I didn't have enough clients. I asked God for abundance, send me clients. Now I literally I don't know how I'm going to handle all the work that I'm getting. So if I could sit here and just, go into meetings all the time, oh my gosh, life is so hard and blah, blah, blah. Or I could say like, watch this, guys. And that's just how it goes. Let's see. Right. Okay. So now we're going to page 134, third paragraph. The alcoholic may find it hard to reestablish friendly relations with his children. And for me, it was more like after I got abstinent, my siblings still to this day, and it's been 20 years, I think, are still a little bit distant from me because of what it was like then. Their young minds were impressionable while he was drinking, and that's for sure true with my siblings who were younger than me. Without saying so, they may cordially hate him for what he has done to them and to their mother. The children are sometimes dominated by a pathetic hardness and cynicism. They cannot seem to forgive and forget. They may hang on for a few months long after mother has accepted dad's new way of living and thinking. In time, they will see he is a new man, and in their own way, they will let him know it. When this happens, they can be invited to join in morning meditation, and then they can take part in the daily discussion without rancor or bias. From that point on, progress will be rapid. Marvelous results will often follow such a reunion. Like I said, for 12 years, my brother did not talk to me. I had no idea why. I would talk to his wife and I'd be like, what's going on? She's like, I've tried. He's not. I'm sorry. And then one day he just sent me a text and, explained everything. So I have to give people space to experience what they need to experience. And all I need to do is just be consistent. If I'm just consistent with my way of living, and I keep showing up and demonstrate the way of life that I'm living, people come around. When I first started eating the way that I eat now, it was just another diet for my family. But to this day, my other brother, he said to me recently, he's like, "You still going to meetings?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like it's just the way that it is now. It's just the way that it is. So consistency and time changes minds. I don't have to fix everything right away. Okay. Page 135, whether the family goes on a spiritual basis or not, the alcoholic member has to if he would recover. The others must be convinced of his new status beyond the shadow of a doubt. Seeing is believing to most families who have lived with the drinker, right? So one day of me saying, guess what? Thank you, Anik. I'm in program now, so everything's going to be great now. That doesn't mean anything. It's years and years of putting in the time and the consistency and showing up that tells people that this is who I am. Trust is something that needs to be earned, and that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. So now I'm going to jump into the story Acceptance is the Answer, which is like that's like a whole workshop on its own. But basically, this guy, if you haven't read the story, it's hilarious. But basically, he was a doctor who drugged himself and kept writing himself prescriptions. And basically, he gives amazing advice about his wife, because he goes on a lot about his wife and their codependent relationship. But he basically says one thing. He says, life keeps getting simpler and easier as we try to reverse my old idea by taking care of the internal environment via the 12 steps and letting the external environment take care of itself, right? So before this, on the earlier page, he had said, if I could just control the external environment, the internal environment would then become comfortable. That's why we try to control people in our lives, by the way. It's because if I make you guys do what I think you should do, then I'll feel better. But he realizes in this story that he has to manage his own internal environment, and the external environment will just sort of manage itself. And that's really true when I make God my higher power. I just have to control my own side of the street, my own serenity, and everything else is none of my business. So on 417, this is really like the best advice until the end of this chapter. Okay. So he says, when I stopped living in the problem and began living in the answer, the problem went away. If I harp on my husband doing A, B, and C, that's who he is. That's what he's going to do, right? What I feed grows. But if instead I say, okay, this is the situation, so what's the solution? And if I don't know the solution, okay, what does God have to say about this? That's where I need to go, because it's so easy for me to like spiral around like how everybody in my life is causing me issues and blah, blah, blah. I need to focus on the solution, not the problem. And I say this to my kids also. We're talking about the problem here, not the solution. Excuse me, let's focus on the solution, not the problem. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today, which is such garbage, but it's true. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. I mean, isn't that the worst thing you've ever read in your life? Oh my God. So you're telling me that I have to look at the world and it's my problem? Get out of here. Get out of town. My idiot husband and my ungrateful, bratty children. And that's me. That's my problem. Yes, it is. Yes, it is, ladies and gentlemen. If I do not accept that things are the way they are, I suffer. So if I don't want to suffer, I need to accept and allow people to be who they are. Not that they're asking my permission, but basically I need to fire myself from thinking that things should not be the way they are. Ironically, the minute I'd say around the time that I let go of my husband ever getting into program, he's now coming to the big book meetings that I have in my studio. Never, ever thought that would happen. But once I was just like, okay, it's just not going to happen. He's coming now. I have no idea if he's going to work a program, but the point is, like, that was on his timeline, not mine. We've been married almost 18 years, okay? From day one, I was like, come on. It's taken a really long time. Okay, 1 minute left, fine. Right. So until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I could accept life completely on life terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. The secret to good relationships is to change myself, not anybody else. If something somebody else is doing is pissing me off, it's my problem, not theirs. I hate that so much, but it's true. Okay. And then the other thing he talks about, which I mentioned before, is today Max and I try to communicate what we feel rather than what we think. That takes a lot of work, right? It's not, I can get into like intellectual and opinion arguments until the cows come home. Is that even an expression? I don't know what it is now. So like until the cows come home. But that's not going to get me anywhere. But if I say to my husband, you know, when you said that, that made me feel really lonely and I just want to feel connected, who can argue with that? Who can argue with that? The other piece, he talks about working the 12 steps around his wife. I am powerless over alcohol. My home life is unmanageable by me. To the 12th, in which I tried to think of her as a sick Al-Anon and treat her with the love I would give a sick AA newcomer. When I do this, we get along fine. Everybody's spiritually sick. My God, we're all spiritually sick, and we all are getting over whatever shit we're all getting over from our lives. And like we have to look at each other with empathy. And you know what, Anik? I'm going over the time because this is my meeting and I'm allowed. I don't care. So I'll give you an example, okay? I've told this story before, I'll tell it again. My mom died 15 years ago. She was 55 and it sucked. And my dad was 55 also. And then 5 minutes later, he got married to somebody else who was not, and to this day is not interested in like having us around. And it's really, really painful. And a few times I would go there and she was really mean and abusive to me. And to the point where I told my father that like I needed like some space. I couldn't talk to him for a little bit, like a few weeks. And then when I called him, God gave me the words because I asked for help before I talked to him. And the words came out, and I said, "You're in a really shitty situation because you love me, but you see what's happening in the situation. And I know that you see it because otherwise you'd be arguing with me. And that must be really hard to be torn between your wife and your daughter." Oh my God. I like that is so not me. I would be like, don't you know what I've been through? My mom died, now you're my parent left, and blah, blah, blah. No, my dad is a sick person who doesn't have all the tools he needs, and all I can do is treat him with love and kindness. And that's why we talk almost every day now. And we have a great relationship. That would not have been possible if I didn't have this program. Am I so great and righteous? Absolutely not. God did something for me because there's no way I would have thought to do that by myself. Okay. And the last thing, and I'm just going to put this point in because, like I said, it's my meeting and I can do what I want. Okay. I can watch my serenity level rise when I discard my expectations. Okay. Serenity and expectations are in direct proportion to each other. If I expect something from you and you don't deliver, my serenity is destroyed. So I need to let go of my own expectations, right? But then my rights try to move in and they too can force my serenity level down. I don't know how many of you guys are in partnerships, but like, you owe me. Do you know how much I do? Do you know, like this house would burn down if I wasn't doing all the things that I do every day. Don't you realize what I deserve? No. I have to discard my rights as well as my expectations by asking myself, how important is it really? How important is it compared to my serenity, my emotional sobriety? Sometimes I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer that question because I'm just like, yeah, but the principle. Okay, but guess what? I don't have the luxury of being emotionally off. I cannot go back to restless, irritable, and discontent because we know what happens when I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, right? And when I place more value on my serenity and sobriety than on anything else, I can maintain them at a higher level, at least for the time being, right? Do I want to be right or do I want to be peaceful? The correct answer is peaceful, even when you don't feel that way. Trust me. Okay. This is an unfair world. I'm not always going to get what I think I deserve. The people I love are going to screw up, but that's okay. It's all okay because if I trust in God that I'm going to get what I need and everything is going to work out the way it should be, then I don't get in trouble in my relationships. I just I just don't. And I'll quickly share another story and then I really will stop. Um, when I married my husband, he had two girls, they were 4 and 5. And all I cared about was getting attention and having to share my money. I was really pissed off about that. For about a year, I resented how every time we wanted to do something, we always had to bring them, or, on Sundays, we had to go drive and get them, or it was like they were just really inconvenient, really inconvenient. I thought they were just going to be like these little extra things, like purse dogs or whatever, but no, they're like these things that I have to deal with. Or in the middle of the night, waking up and having to clean bathroom accidents. Like I was 25. This is not what I signed up for. Okay. And then, my mom actually was a really great example of like she just adopted them as her grandchildren. And then when I saw what happened with my father, and I realized like one decision to either accept or reject because of my own fear and needs could destroy a family. And it clicked for me that selfishness is can actually destroy lives. It can. These girls would not have had a real family if I just made it about me. And so God gave me clarity and I was able to get myself out of the way. And today I'm obsessed with my daughters, like obsessed with them. We were just, we were texting, one of them was texting me this morning. Both of them came with us to Israel. They both live here. When my 21-year-old was 15, she moved in with us because they had a home with us, because I made a home for them. Because guess what? It starts with the woman. It just does. The woman decides. So I made this place for them in the home, and now they have one, and we are their home, and they are my family, and I'm the luckiest person in the world. Can you imagine what I would have lost if I had been, let my selfishness get in the way? It's the greatest gift of my life. When I go to my grave, I know I will do right. I will know that I did right by those kids, all five of them, but particularly the first two. So anyway, that's all. I'll stop there. Thanks.